Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is examine. Let's take a look at some of the definitions or ways that we can use this verb. The first way you might hear the verb examine used is to mean to inspect someone or something in detail to determine their nature or condition. This word, examine, is used quite often with doctors and nurses. They examine patients. So they look at them, look at the parts of their body in great detail in order to determine if they are sick or injured or have some other type of condition. A second way you might hear the verb examine used is to mean to investigate in great detail. So this could come up with police investigations or really sort of any entity that would conduct an investigation. A third way you might hear the verb examine used is to mean to test the knowledge of someone by requiring them to answer questions or perform tasks. Some people think of examine as just saying a kind of a fancy way to say to give a test. A fourth way that's probably less common for you to hear, but if you watch certain types of TV shows, you might have heard this usage. Sometimes lawyers or judges will use this particular verb to mean that someone is formally questioning a witness in court. You should know that examine is a regular verb. To make the progressive form of this verb, we need to drop the E and then add ing to form examining. The past tense and participle forms of this verb are made by adding D. And the reason we're doing that is this verb already ends in an E, so we don't need an extra E there. The verb examine ends with a voiced in sound, so our past tense ending is going to make a D sound. Examined, examined. You might hear a couple phrasal verbs with examine, and their meanings or definitions will tie back to the ones we already looked at earlier, but I thought it would be good to have some examples. You might hear the phrasal verb examine someone or something for something else. And the meaning here is to look closely in search of something. Another verb you might hear, inspect. So let's take a look at this usage in a sentence. Did you examine yourself for ticks after you returned from the hike? And if the word tick is unfamiliar to you, it is this parasite, essentially, that can attach on to people's bodies or animals' bodies, and it tends to pass disease to people. So if you've been in a wooded area, it's usually a good idea to check that you don't have any of these things attaching to you. And they're very tiny. They can be hard to spot. Sometimes they might look like a mole or just other dark spot on your body. A second phrasal verb with examine is examine on. And the meaning here is to give someone a test that covers a particular subject or certain material. Let's take a look at that usage. The teacher examined students on the last chapter. Right? So essentially what this means, the teacher gave a test that covered all of the material that was in the last chapter of their book. Now, we're going to focus today making sentences that are exclusively in the simple future. And normally in these videos, when we make sentences in the simple future, I say, we'll focus just on will, or we will do be going to. But you probably know there are a few different ways to talk about the future, and I thought we could just take a little deeper dive into that today. So when we express that an action is going to happen in the future, we can do that by using will, and we'll look at that in a second. We can use be going to. And a third way we could talk about the future, and this can be a bit confusing, we can use the present progressive. So normally I tell you present progressive is for something happening now or something that's in progress. But you can see from my chart here, there are some instances where you'll hear native speakers use the present progressive to express a future action. So I tried to summarize the instances where we use one verb tense versus another. So what you might see from this chart is if I am talking about a fact, so something I am confident is going to happen in the future, I can use will. I can also use be going to. If I'm making a prediction, so I think something will happen, again, I can use will or I can use be going to. When people discuss their plans, so what they intend to do, you might hear be going to, or you might hear the present progressive. That's the one place where this could be used to talk about a future event. If people are making a quick decision, right, so they have not had a long thought out plan, you're going to hear will with quick decisions. You'll also hear will with offers and promises. Now that we've reviewed those, let's make some sample sentences with our verb of the day, examine. We'll start with will. And the nice thing about this structure for the simple future is that it will always be will and then the base verb in the affirmative. This doesn't change based on the subject. Let's look at an example sentence. The book will examine how elections are held around the world. This sentence could be a prediction, what they think someone is writing about, for example. If I want to make a negative sentence using will, I'm going to insert not right after will. And if it's more comfortable for you to say will not and then the base verb, that's okay. You might hear native speakers use the contraction won't. So here is an example of a negative simple future sentence using will. The research won't examine the potential causes of this type of cancer. Again, this might be a prediction. If I want to make a yes or no question using will, I'm going to start with that modal, will, then I'll have my subject, then the base verb. Will the doctor examine my knee? Now let's look at making sentences using be going to. Here, when I say be, I really mean a present tense form of be. So that's going to be am, is, or are. And that, of course, is going to change based on our subject. So our structure is to use a form of be, then going to, and the base verb. Let's look at the affirmative example. The governor's team is going to examine each county's data before making a recommendation. These could be their plans. If I want to make a negative sentence using be going to, I just need to insert not after my be verb. Again, you might hear native speakers use the contraction form isn't or aren't. Here's an example sentence. Historians aren't going to examine the event until more time has passed. If I want to ask a yes or no question, I'll start with be, then I'll have my subject, then going to, and the base verb. Are we going to examine students tomorrow? And I could be asking about plans for a particular class or group of students. Finally, let's look at making simple future sentences using the present progressive. So for all of these sentences, I'm going to be expressing something about plans. To make any sentence in the present progressive, I need a present form of be and then the ing form of the verb. Here is an affirmative example. The lawyer is examining the witness next week. So that is the plan. That's why you might see present progressive used in this sentence. And again, this ties back to that fourth meaning of the verb. Now, if I want to make a negative present progressive sentence, again, I'm going to insert not after my be verb. The lawyers aren't examining the witnesses next week. And if I want to ask a question in the present progressive, but I'm, again, asking about a future event, I'm going to use be, then my subject, then the ing form of the verb. Are we examining students tomorrow? So you'll notice the two questions I made here, I'm trying to point them out, here in the be going to and here in the present progressive, they both really have the same meaning because I'm asking about future plans. Now let's take a look at some words that are related to our verb examine. The first word we'll look at is the noun examination. And just like our verb, this word can also have a few different meanings. One meaning is a detailed inspection or investigation. So here is an example of that usage. Her actions are under examination. A second way to use the noun examination is to mean a formal test of a person's knowledge in a particular subject or with a particular skill. Here is an example of that usage. Final examinations will be held the week of December 14th. You know, there's a number of college students who will have that experience about this time this year. A third way we can use the noun examination is to mean the formal questioning of a witness in court. Now again, this usage ties back to our fourth definition of the verb. The lawyer's examination lasted 2 hours. Now, I'm also going to point out there is a shortened form of the noun examination, and it's just exam. This might be more common to hear, especially in less formal situations. But the noun exam is really going to have the exact same meanings that we looked at above. So you might hear a college student say, I have 3 final exams next week. Right? Just a shortened way instead of saying examination. You might also hear exam to refer to sort of a detailed medical inspection or investigation. Here is an example of that. I had an eye exam last week. Right? So not so much like a test where I'm being graded, but my vision is being checked. The last word we're going to look at today is the noun examiner. It's a person whose job is to inspect something or maybe to give tests. Here is an example of this noun in a sentence. The examiners read the directions to the test takers. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.